Okay, so with this video, I am going to be explaining the scheduling functionality in Stammer. I'm going to be talking about high level how it works because you need that understanding in order to kind of debug why it might not be working properly. And then we're going to walk through a real scheduling bot that runs on an older product of mine called Notify.so. And we're going to run through its scheduling functionality to explain exactly how everything works. Now, with that in mind, if you are finding it very, very hard to write these prompts to get the models to do what you want, then it may, if you're in a, if you have a time crunch, it may be best for you to try to find a prompt engineer on something like Upwork. That is always an option. But like I always say on the Discord and on Twitter or X, investing in learning prompting is never a bad thing. It's not going to go anywhere. This is the new way to talk to computers. But that's enough of my ranting. Let's get into it. So how does scheduling work very high level? Well, you all already know that the way you work with ChatGPT is by drafting, creating a prompt, and then sending it to ChatGPT, and then you get a response back, right? Now, in order for the scheduling to work, what we actually do is use a functionality called function calling that ChatGPT has implemented. Now, function calling, believe it or not, at least in my opinion, is the key differentiator in many ways for ChatGPT. Of course, their GPT-4 model also performs much better and much, much more reliably than the competition. But because they have built this function calling, it enables platforms like ours to basically build additional tools. Notice that I'm calling these functions tools that ChatGPT can access and gives it a clean way in order to interface, talk to other systems. So what I am explaining with this diagram here is that what we do, literally, what we do is we take your prompt that you've created. We have functions that we've defined in a certain format that ChatGPT has told us to put them in, and we send those along with your prompt. And what kind of happens, high level, is we say, hey, ChatGPT, here's this prompt. Here's these functions that we're providing to you that allows you to tell our code to do things. Here's what these things can be used to do. And in the prompt, we describe how to use them. You literally tell ChatGPT, and you'll see that in a moment here, how to use and call these functions, these tools, and then it knows to do them. And when it returns a response, it will actually tell our code, oh, hey, by the way, go ahead and execute this function because based on the input I'm getting from the person, the user, they want to do this. So hopefully I'm explaining that well. This video is kind of a first attempt here. It's a draft in many ways. We'll create more polished videos over time. Okay, so now let's jump into talking more about how scheduling works with a real life example here. So I'm going to go inside the Notifier production chatbot. I will clear out the chat and we're going to go to the scheduling tab, okay? Let's go to the scheduling tab and let me show you something interesting here because I just remember that I did this with the Notifier scheduling bot. Let me move this. So I'm going to click here to see the base, the scheduling prompt, and notice it's actually empty. So what does that mean? Well, you actually just need the scheduling prompt information somewhere in the prompt, right? You can easily, blank this out. You can remove it all as long as you put it somewhere in the prompt. We originally thought it would be easier if we kind of separated it within the user interface and said, okay, here's the scheduling system prompt. Here it is. That way we kind of keep it separate. But you can always take it out of here and put it in the main system prompt if you want to. And that is actually what I did for this bot. So let's go into the system prompt. And notice also that my prompt is very well structured, right? I've got a comment in here that really has no purpose other than to say it's a comment, but very important to remember here. Now, here is where we get to the meat of how to schedule an appointment, okay? It's this entire section right here. So let me actually do this. So let me copy this, and I'm going to put it in this Notion page that I'm working on here. Hold on just a moment. Okay, so here we go. Here is the entire scheduling prompt. Okay, I put it into this Notion page here. Essentially, what I'm saying is when the user wants to schedule an appointment, you ask them what time zone they are in. And I think this should actually say, yeah, actually, that's a little error there I can correct. But this should actually say showing the available times or displaying the available times. But there's actually two functions that we provide to ChatGPT in order to get scheduling done. Let's go ahead and talk about those functions really quickly, and then we'll get into the rest of this prompt. There's the get available times function. Okay, and what that does is it checks the user's availability based on taking in a time zone in a specific format. That format is defined actually here. So a valid IN or IANA time zone string. There we go. And if you're wondering what this format is, it's called Markdown, basically. Notion supports Markdown highlighting. Eventually, we're going to have that in our editor, but for now, I just do it into Notion so I can share it with you all guys. But yeah, that's what the get available times function does. Okay, it returns basically the availability of the person that the scheduling function is connected to. And that's our code that's running. ChatGPT tells our code, hey, go run this function. Here's the time zone that the user is in. And to explain that to ChatGPT, I literally had to tell it how to call this function. So I say, then you will use the get available times function, passing the user's time zone converted by you, so ChatGPT, to a valid, IANA time zone string to get the available times for the agent. And then ChatGPT will literally call that. Our code will send back a response to it, and it then knows the availability. In another video, I will get you guys an example of what that response looks like that our code returns. But now, once we have that right, once ChatGPT has the availability of the user, it's then time to display that to the user. And this is where we've made a slight change lately. So what I say here is, then I want you to propose 3 random. Do not mention they are random. There was a reason I did this in the first place, but it may be better to change this to, then I want you to propose 3 of the next, I know that English is not perfect, available time slots. Then I want you to propose 3, I'll just put 3 next available time slots for the times, from the times the agent is available. You do have to say that in the following format. We found it's best to use this format, but in theory, you could easily define another display format if you wanted to, and you would do that here. Just make sure that if you have an example conversation later in the base system prompt, that's not kind of conflicting, or sometimes it gets confused. This is optional. Show these timeframes using Markdown for clarity. We do render Markdown, but that's completely optional. And obviously on some platforms, like if we're routing it through, Facebook Messenger or some other connection, it's not going to have Markdown, so keep that involved. Then we say to it, if the user doesn't like any of these times, give them 3 others that will work, okay? So that is how this works. That's the first function. The first part of scheduling is getting the availability, displaying it to the user, right? So what's next? Well, next is actually scheduling the appointment. And that is why we have this other function called schedule appointment. Okay, and now let's read this. When the user picks a time from one of these times, that's implied, you will then get their email. I'm actually going to remove this because I've been noticing some instability in this. For some reason, it can't tell if the user has, well, sometimes it just seems to think the user has already provided their email. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it for this. Let us know if that starts to work for you. We're going to be pushing out the new models that were released a few days ago, probably tomorrow. Today is Thursday, February 1st. So we may do it, this weekend. So maybe it'll work better at that point. They specifically said in those models that they've released that it fixes issues where the chatbot doesn't seem to kind of focus. And I'm paraphrasing, they use a slightly different terminology, but essentially it pays attention to instructions better. And that's exactly what these prompts are instructions. Yeah, we'll have to see if this makes it so much better that we don't have to investigate the sub-prompting technique that we were talking about. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling here. But when the user picks a time, you will then get their email. Okay, obviously we need the email from the user in order to schedule the appointment, right? Once you have their email and the time, you will then use the schedule appointment function to schedule the appointment by calling it with the email and the time in RFC 3339. It's a format that specifies a date, a time, and then a time zone offset is actually what it's called. If you have never dealt with programming time-related things, then count yourself lucky. That there's a lot of complexity involved, believe it or not, in programming with time. It's a nightmare. But luckily, as long as you tell ChatGPT these things, it will handle a lot of this complexity for you. Okay, I also said to it here, important note, this is just an example call for you to understand. I would probably put now the function. Please do not use this email. Instead, ask the user for their email and use that. I did that because when I was originally testing this several months ago, sometimes it would actually call it with example.com. I can't remember if that was 3.5 or 4. I think it was an early version of 4. Anyway, by putting this in here, it seems to have solved that issue. Then I say, then respond that the appointment has been scheduled based on the response from the schedule appointment function. What I'm trying to say there is if for some reason that function fails, do not tell the user that the appointment has been successfully scheduled, right? You'd think you wouldn't have to say that, but sometimes you do. Informing the user the appointment has been scheduled. Yes. So when the appointment has been successfully scheduled, go ahead and include the link that the function gives you, that the link that links to the successfully scheduled appointment. That's a mouthful, but basically this function, schedule appointment, returns back a success message and then also a link to the successfully scheduled appointment. And I'm basically just telling ChatGPT here, include that link so that the user so they know that it was really scheduled and they can click on it if they want, although it will appear in their email and they should also get an email about that. So that is it. That is how this thing works, really. And as long as it's properly detailed and you instruct ChatGPT in how to do the appointment scheduling, keep in mind here, it's literally like I'm telling a human, hey, run this to get this, then do this, then do this. And this is how it works with these LLMs. You may think in many ways that this is, a lot of work to get this scheduling to work, but there's so much power in this because there's a lot of flexibility in here, right, that we've left up to ChatGPT. And that's where the power with ChatGPT is. Now, let me just finish this video, by giving you an example of it working. Let me actually go to Notifier. So I've got the Notifier chat pulled up. I'm just going to drop right into the appointment scheduling flow by saying, can I schedule a meeting? Absolutely. What time zone are you in, it says. And notice this is the power with ChatGPT, right? I'm not going to say a time zone. What I'm actually going to say is San Diego. It's calling the get available times function right now. And it says, great, you're in the Pacific time zone. Notice that it translated San Diego to the Pacific time zone for us. That's pretty amazing, honestly. That would not be easily possible without using an LLM. Not automatically like that. So it says, great, you're in the Pacific time zone. Here's what we have available. Tonight is Thursday, February 1st at about 6:17 p.m. right now. So these are all accurate based on the availability that I've set. And now I'm going to tell it, okay, let's do number 1. I'm just going to say, let's do 1. Now it wants my email address, right? I am going to give it kind of an example email address here, john@example.com. Okay, great. There we go. So the appointment has been successfully scheduled. We've got a Google Calendar event. This should actually pull up this event. And let's just see. Okay. And there it is in my Stammer calendar. Meeting scheduled via the Notify.so help, which was, I believe, the name of the bot. And then we got John at example.com. I don't know where that email is going to go. But then we have my email. So that's the one that's actually connected. I see. Okay, got it. But that is it. Okay, so let me know if you guys have any questions on this. Hopefully this video was somewhat helpful.